In our last video for this unit, we're going to talk about a few things that happen as a consequence of the way the kidneys function. One of the things that the kidneys are quite important for is regulating blood pressure. There's a section within the kidney that's called the Juxtaglomerular Apparatus. Now this structure is involved with maintaining an adequate amount of pressure in the glomerulus, in the renal tubules, in the nephrons, so that we have proper filtration of the blood. Now, in order to make sure that happens, we need to have proper blood pressure. So this particular apparatus, the juxtaglomerular apparatus, makes sure that we have enough blood pressure so that we can have adequate filtration at the kidneys, and our blood is being correctly filtered, which maintains us in a healthy state. And also it helps maintain our blood pressure. Now, in the distal convoluted tubule, there are groups of cells that will detect if there's a low volume of filtrate inside of the nephron. Now, when that happens, those cells will trigger the release of an enzyme called renin. Renin is an enzyme that will help us produce another protein called angiotensin II. Now, angiotensin II is a protein that has a direct effect on our blood pressure. So it's a sequence of events that starts with, we notice a low pressure or a low volume of fluid, filtrate in the tubule. When that happens, we get a release of a hormone called renin, and renin's involved with producing another blood protein called angiotensin II, and angiotensin II is what increases the blood pressure. Now, let's have a quick look on where that juxtaglomerular apparatus is located. So here's our nephron, and if you can locate the different parts, Bowman's capsule, the glomerulus on the inside, then we get the proximal convoluted tubule, the descending and the ascending loop of Henle, and then we get into the distal convoluted tubule. So in the distal convoluted tubule, we're going to have that juxtaglomerular apparatus right here. And that's going to let these cells know that we need to release renin. And then renin, of course, will help us produce the angiotensin II, which will increase blood pressure. So we'll see more filtrate being pushed through the nephrons. And that'll increase the volume of fluid or filtrate that reaches the distal convoluted tubule. And as a result of that, our blood pressure will normalize. Now, the last process we'll talk about in this unit, the last physiological process, is going to be urination. So urination is the process of expelling urine from the body when urine leaves the body, and the medical term for that is called micturition. That's a big fancy word for urination or going to the bathroom. Now, it involves both voluntary and involuntary muscles. And those are surrounding the rings of muscle around the urethra. So we have two sphincter muscles, and we talked about sphincter muscles in the digestive system. One of those is going to be involuntary, we can't control that, and the other one's going to be voluntary, we can control that. So as the bladder fills up, we have receptors in the walls of the bladder that respond to being stretched. So when we get adequate amount of volume in the walls of the bladder, those receptors will stretch, and they'll send information to the spinal cord and then to the brain that lets you know that there's enough volume of urine in here now. We should probably void this urine. When that impulse is set, the brain will send a message down to the muscles in the bladder, which will cause those to contract. So the bladder will contract, the volume inside will get smaller, and that will effectively push the urine out of the bladder. It will need to go through those sphincters in order to be released. One of those sphincters is going to be released automatically. We'll have no control over that. And then the final sphincter you'll be able to control. So that'll give you the opportunity to run to the bathroom if you need to before you urinate. So one of those sphincters are voluntary that you can control, and the other one is involuntary. It happens as a part of reflex. Now, the urine is actually one of the most highly tested samples within any laboratory. We can gain a lot of information about the health of a person just by taking a sample of their urine. There's going to be several normal constituents of urine, normal things we would expect to find in everybody's urine sample, because urine is a waste product, and we know we're going to get rid of some waste every time we produce urine. So we're going to lose some nitrogenous waste products like urea, uric acid, creatinine. We're going to lose some electrolytes, sodium, potassium, and chloride. Those are definitely going to be lost in the urine. We'll also lose some pigments, and generally when we're talking about pigments, we're talking about stuff produced in the liver, bile pigments, for example. So some of those are going to show up naturally every time. But if we find any other things in the urine, then we know something may be happening a bit different, or maybe something that's gone wrong. So abnormal constituents of the urine would be like glucose. We shouldn't have glucose in our urine. Albumin, which is a protein, that also shouldn't be in our urine. Blood, of course, should never be in your urine. Ketones, white blood cells, casts, don't worry about that. But all of these things, if they show up in the urine, then that's an indication that the patient is unhealthy, or there's something going on at that time with that patient that may need further investigation. So the urine is a very highly tested matter, I guess. It's a highly tested specimen, or that we can get a lot of information from, and it's super simple to get because we don't have to hurt the person, we just need to collect their urine. Some of the conditions that can, or common disorders that can be associated with the kidneys, you can see here, it's quite a long list, okay? I'm not necessarily worried about you guys understanding all these. Just know that there are a lot of things that can go wrong with the kidneys, and this is a partial list of some of those things. So don't worry yourself with the details on this slide. I just want you to know that there are a lot of things that can go wrong when we're talking about the urinary system. And the last slide for this unit, we talk about a very common treatment that involved around kidneys, and that's called dialysis. So when kidneys aren't working to the best of their ability, or they're not functioning well at all, or if a patient's waiting for a kidney transplant, for example, very often they'll be put on a treatment called dialysis. Now, dialysis is an artificial method for removing all of those molecules from a person's kidney. So it's basically a treatment that takes the blood from somebody, and it does the same job as the kidney. It filters the blood and it puts it back into the body without anything harmful in it. So a dialysis machine is able to filter the same way that we do in the kidney, by producing concentration gradients. And we didn't go into that detail, but that's how basically these machines are set up, and it's also how the kidney works. A dialysis treatment is one of the most common types of treatment you'll see in a hospital. And from a laboratory perspective, a dialysis patient is somebody who goes to the doctor and consistently has abnormal readings from their urine samples or from their blood samples. So their blood chemistry is consistently abnormal, and in order to fix that, we'll use dialysis in order to properly filter the blood so that these blood components go back to a normal state.